Hello ladies and gentlemen, Trippy AK back again for another C++ tutorial, and today we're going to be talking about the for loop. Now, the for loop is one of the most simple type of loops you could have, or one of the most used, I would say, personally. Now, in order to get a for loop going, let's have an int value, x equals to 5. And then next thing we could have is the for, and then a body. In order to have a for loop, you would have to obviously have the keyword for, and then inside here there are three specific things you have to have. One is initializer, the condition, and then the increment and decrement. So I'll explain. You have an integer called x, which is 5. So we'll start this essentially at 5, and then your condition x is greater than, let's say, greater than 0. That's the condition. Next will be x minus minus. Now, what we're saying is for 5 greater than 0, subtract 5 every time. Now, every time that we have that, we are going to print out on the screen cout x. So if we do this, we have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and if I format it a little bit better, and L, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off, or some shit like that. So, just for kicks, blast off. So, blast off. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. And once we have that, that's your basic for loop. Now, you could start it off without, say, the int x and just have your integer x equal to 5. You could totally declare it within here, but that's just really big and messy. And instead of being that, you could have plus plus, and you could have it the other way around where it's 10. Let's make this 0 instead. So if we were to comment this out, it should go from 0 to 10 and such as. Now it doesn't go to 10 because the condition says less than 10. 10 is not equal to 10, so it's only 0 through 9. We could also adjust this to be 1, so it's 1 through 9. As you see, that's a very basic for loop. Now, that's good and dandy. For loops are awesome. It saves a lot of time doing calculations in the head and doing everything by yourself instead of like having 15 lines of code doing the repetitive same thing over and over. You could have a for loop. Now, how does this apply to real life? Well, in one of my, as a small little project of my computer science class, we had to make a way to go from the user inputting a number, adding all the numbers, and it decrements by 1. So let's say you have 3, then you add every 1 all the way to 0. So 3 plus 2 plus 1 plus 0, that equals 6 in total. Now, if you ever taken algebra, probably algebra 2, or a little bit higher level math such as calculus, you would obviously had done summation of partial sums, and that is a slight pain in the butt where you have, let's say, 55 plus 54 plus 53 all the way down to nothing, 0. That's a whole lot of numbers to do. So let's just quickly make a little program that does the summation of partial sums. So in order to do this, we need to have two variables, a user input and a holder. So we're going to have int sum is equal to 0, because when you have an empty cup, you have an empty cup, and that's 0. Then we're going to have int input, not input, P-I-N-P-U-T. So the input is going to be user input, obviously, and the reason why we have a cin is because if we did not have the cin, then we're going to go into a massive recursive loop in the for loop, which will cause us and the computer a headache eventually. So for now, when you think about it, what do you need? Well, you need to start off at the number desired, so input. As my first example was, x is 5. The condition that needs to be met, input is greater than 0. Because we have to go all the way to 0. Then input minus minus. So, for example, we start at 3. 3 is greater than 0, so do this in the body. Then every time we get out of the body, decrement by 1. So we start at 3, it'll go to 2, it'll go to 1, it'll go to 0. 0 is equal to 0, and it's not greater than 0, so it's going to get out of the loop. Now, in order to make our little math thing work, we could do sum plus equal input. Whoops. Basically, right here, every time it sees this, sum plus input equals sum. So it's going to store our new variable, our new amount actually, into sum. So in a blink of an eye, or a second, it's not a blink of an eye, it's going to go sum is 3, well input is 3, 0 plus 3 is 3, 3 plus 2 is 5, 5 plus 1 equals 6. So if we were to print this out on screen, sum, print it out. Now it's waiting for input 3, and it says 6. Awesome. Now what about 55? As I said before, 1,540. Pretty cool. Whoops, not 10. Let me go back in there. Build and run. What about 10? 55. Interesting. So, if you want to see the entire process over and over again, we could do sum plus PUT. So it's going to put on the screen the initial sum plus our input. It's going to go and do its thing. And then so if you have cout the sum, then the input, you should see that every time it goes through, you'll see a difference or a change. And hopefully it will. Let's say 3. So as I said before, within a blink of an eye, it goes 0, which is our sum, plus 3, user input. Then 3 plus the user input minus 1, and it iterates all the way down to 0. Because it exits the loop, and then you have your final answer. So that is the basics of for loops. I use for loops sometimes. You can find different ways to use for loops to go through things. Definitely the next tutorial I'm going to go through arrays, because arrays work very well with for loops. And yeah, pretty much that is going to be it for this tutorial, and I'll see you next tutorial.